Welcome everyone to another BitShares Open Agenda Hangout on the Beyond Bitcoin Network. I am Fuzzy, and today is Saturday, April 7th, 2018, and this is Hangout number 66. We join each week with the intent to bring the BitShares community a means to have a voice in the ears of those inclined to understand better the amazing possibilities that the longest blockchain in the world, BitShares, offers. So sit around with us today and let's welcome our guest speakers for this week, who'll be taking home 50 BeyondBit cross-chain tokens for joining and discussing the updates that they are providing for us and cool projects and other things of importance to them within the BitShares ecosystem. Again, these hangouts have been here with the specific intent of making it so the BitShares community has a place to archive various things of importance to them, and also give people the capability to talk about what they're doing without necessarily having to always pay journalistic outlets to give them the ears of the community. So with that said, today we're going to be starting off with BitShares core team updates from Fox, after which we're going to go to CM Steem, who's going to be talking about Hertz, BeyondBitShares, and the Hug API updates. Following that, we will have vICOFund. After that, we're going to talk a little bit about the BitShares GUI reference wallet that Talkinator posted about, 25 additional API RPC BitShares nodes, and defending the blockchain. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give a few announcements myself today. We don't normally do that. We generally keep it just for all of you, but this is something that we're trying to do. The Beyond Bitcoin volunteers, I like to call them, the community who helps and makes all this stuff possible. They've been helping me working behind the scenes on some cool announcements that we're going to be bringing as well. So with that said, let's go ahead and say, hey, Fox, are you able to step up and speak right now?
Hey, good morning, Fuzzy. Thanks very much for having me on this morning. It's always a pleasure to be here. So this week, I've got 3 updates from the core team. Again, I'm Ryan R. Fox. I'm the coordinator for the core team. And this week, I wanted to tell you about our next release that we've got upcoming, a new contribution guide that we're drafting, and then a little bit about the Graphene DevCon that's coming up. So the first thing is that the core team is now focused on our next consensus changing release, and we're targeting mid-May for this one. So this will be a hard fork, and all nodes will be required to update at that time. So we'll keep you updated as it comes closer, but just be prepared for that sometime in mid-May. So really, what's targeted in this particular release? Well, there are a handful of BSIPs that are in there. There's BSIP 26, 27, 29, 30, 34, and 37. I'm not going to go into all of those in detail, but you can play the recording back and then go to the BSIPs area of the GitHub repository and dig into the details on those. I'll tell you in general what we're focused on in this particular release is the market engine, order matching, asset issuance and updates thereof, and then basic code cleanup. And the results of this should allow an improved market activities for our users. So really excited about this one. It'll be coming out in mid-May, and we'll keep you updated in the coming weeks as to how we're progressing with that. Next, I want to talk to you about a new draft contribution guide that we have up on the on the BitShares GitHub wiki page, and also a corresponding demo project that we're using to apply those concepts, solicit feedback from you, and then iterate on this guideline as we try to determine how we are going to build a collaboration environment using GitHub. So let me see if I can paste in the link here quickly. Well, I can't seem to make the old copy paste work there. So I'll just let you know that you can follow this on github.com/BitsharesCore/wiki/contribution-guide. And in there, what you're going to see is I guess what you're going to see there is an outline of what it is that we're trying to accomplish here in order to better engage the community, receiving requests, enhancements or bug fixes, and then to provide a visual representation of what we're planning for the future, what we're actively working on, and what we're done with and actually are ready for release. So all community members are highly encouraged to participate in this process. This will help us enable for the ad hoc contributions and providing compensation, therefore, based on the prioritization and effort estimates that I've been discussing in the past weeks. So how does it work and how can you get involved? Well, first, get over to the wiki page, find that contribution guide, read through it, and then try out some of those concepts. What we're going to encourage you to do is to go in and create new user stories and tasks. So these are special types of issues that we detail in the contribution guide on how to use those. So please, if you're going to come in and help us with this project, please use the prefix of demo, put that inside of some brackets. This way we'll ensure that we track them to our demo project and that we don't get them involved with what we're actually doing in production. But again, anybody can create these special types of issues. And then the guide provides a template that you can follow. So just review the way that we're hoping that this will be used, and the guideline will evolve over time. So as people provide feedback and say, hey, have you considered, and let's try this, we'll adapt that. So when you're going there and reading the guide, it should be up to date at the time that you're reading it. So review other cards that are within the project. You can comment on them, of course. This is what's really going to help us determine, what it is that you like and what it is that you feel can be improved upon. So I really appreciate your feedback and help with this process. This is really going to help the BitShares core team be better at collaboration, communication, connection with the community. So thank you in advance for your participation in that. Appreciate it. All right, and the last thing is I want to let you guys know that the core team will be presenting at the Graphene DevCon in Shanghai, upcoming on the 5th and 6th of May. So you can see this at the website of blockgeek.io/graphene/index.html. There you will see Alfredo, Tamami, Takanator, and myself from the core team, along with Sigby from the UI team. And so we'll be representing BitShares on stage in panel discussions, some demonstrations, presentations, and we'll be available for one-on-one conversations regarding our technology and developing upon the BitShares platform. So make sure that you make your bookings now to join us there in Shanghai, upcoming the first weekend in May. We're excited to be able to represent the core team, represent BitShares, and go on this world stage and talk about our technology, how we're supporting it, and how others can get involved and build upon it. Just to let you know, I will be traveling the next 2 Saturday mornings, so unfortunately I won't be able to join you, but I will be back there in 3 weeks' time. I'll probably be able to put some notes up for you guys about what's going on, and you can always reach out to me. I'm Fox at bitshares.boston. I'm Fox on all of the forums, and want to make sure that we get your feedback within our demo site. So go to that wiki and read up and participate that way. Thanks again for your time this morning, everybody.
And thank you, Fox, for your time. So you're going to be, just really quickly, you're going to be, I think this is the largest graphene conference to date, correct?
Yes, that's correct. There was one earlier in January of this year where they had about 450 participants. This one, they're targeting more towards about 1,000 participants. So we're definitely excited to have the invitation to get on stage and talk about BitShares specifically, but then more broadly just about graphene and the underlying technology that allows DPoS and all of the other great stuff that we're building on to talk about it, and certainly to tell the world why we think it's great for you guys to develop upon this platform.
Yeah, I think it'll be also a great place to let everybody know to join up with those user cases, right? Because one of the things that with respect to the part where you're asking people for user cases, if you can offer those types of things, it helps developers say, oh, well, this is something that people would like to do with this platform. How can we make this easier for them, right? So that's another thing of great value that I think that it'll be important to let them know about as well, because you've got a lot of graphene nerds who are going to be there. So I think that's another gem of a place to probably push this. Does anybody else have any questions or comments that they'd like to bring up before I continue going?
Yes. Is the GitHub wiki contribution guide, is this just for issues?
Right, good question. So the contribution guide is going to be for how we collaborate within the GitHub repository in general. So it will cover all sorts of concepts from issues, the way that we put some semantic encoding inside of issues in general, excuse me, and call them user stories and tasks, and we make task lists and how we reference them together. We're making use of the labels so that we can show status, indicate priority, milestones and projects, assignees. We're really looking to leverage GitHub as a platform and what it offers in general, and then build on top of it in a way that's going to work for our team primarily, and secondarily, how we engage successfully with the community as well, so that we as the core team can present back to you what it is that we're actively working on, make sure that we can solicit your feedback, and make sure that you have a good sense of where we're going in the future as well.
So is this only for the core team?
The contribution guide that we're producing is specific to the BitShares core team. Yes, the UI team also have their own contribution standards and the way that their team functions, but the contribution guide that I'm talking about, yes, is specific to the core team.
Okay. Thanks.
Of course, you're welcome.
It's a good point, CM. We should get people to record this. Maybe Fox will bring one of those sets of glasses that records the entire time that he built himself.
I guess I haven't heard if the sessions will be available after the fact. I have to imagine they will. It seems as if BitCrab is going all out on this one. Lots of great sponsors that have come together to be able to put that on for Block Geek as the headline sponsor there.
Heck yeah. Well, thank you for everything you do, Fox. Thank you for keeping us up to date. And just a reminder for everybody who was listening to Fox but may have missed it, he was talking about the hard fork and making sure to go check all the details on the wiki at GitHub. So with that said, thank you, Fox, for joining up this week. And thank you for always providing these updates. This is the reason why we hold these Hangouts and the reason why we're trying to put together a suite of tools that will help the community with this stuff. Okay, so up next is CM Steem, and he's going to be giving updates on Hertz, Beyond BitShares, and the Hug API. CM Steem, how are you doing today?
Hey, Fuzzy, how's it going?
Good, man. Good. I'm glad to hear that you have some updates. Please feel free to step up and give them to everybody, and then we can have a little period where everybody can ask some questions afterwards.
Cool. So I just put some links in the chat there. Sorry for the fun link spam, whatever. So some updates regarding Hertz. Google Assistant, and also the the Hug REST API. So with regards to Hertz, it's been in production. Well, give you a bit of update, some background information on it. Hertz is a smart coin on the BitShares network. It's pegged to the US dollar and uses a sine wave algorithm to fluctuate or will oscillate the feed price over the course of 28 days forever predictably. So we've just passed our full first oscillation. So it's gone from $1 up to like 114 down to 86 cents back to dollar. So it's one full oscillation is complete. So we're moving on to the second oscillation. So I post updates every Wednesday because that's the day that it hits like the most important points in the graph. Currently it's a little bit inactive. We do need some market makers, some liquidity going in there. It's difficult, bootstrapping a new smart coin on BitShares DEX, but once it gets going, hopefully, it'll pick up some steam. In regards to like updates regarding Hertz, I know that Waku, BitShares witness and stuff, he posted an update saying he's kind of stepping down, taking some time for his family and stuff in real life situations. So we've lost one price feed publisher. However, we are hopefully going to get a few more. Clockwork has said that he's interested, and I've given him permission to do so, to publish feeds. And also the user Zapata42 on BitsharesTalk completed the Hertz integration into the BTS price BitShares price feed repo. So that means Hertz has got full price feed script coverage across Xerox, tools, BTS tools, some my own implementation, a couple of the other Witness's own implementations, and also this BTS price. We're just waiting for a couple witnesses to test it out, the BTS price repo, and then the bounty will be released to Zapata42. So the witnesses we're waiting on, who said that they would publish for Hertz if BTS price was integrated, for Hertz. These are magicwallet.witness, hopefully, witness.highblockchain, and winx.witness. So looking forward to you guys participating. You've got permission already if you're listening to publish, so cheers. Right, regarding the Google Assistant. So I said I was going to not work on this and then focus on my studies, but when I procrastinate, I work on this. So deal with it, right? So recently, Google launched the version 2 of their Actions on Google Node.js library. So what this means is that they've upgraded from Dialogflow version 1 to version 2, which brings a whole host of new like functionality and features and stuff. So it basically required migrating to this new library, which changed a significant amount of the code. It's a lot easier to read and to create the code. There's a lot less like pointless code, like lines of the code. Like before, you would have to define the function at the top and an action map at the bottom and then in the middle as well. Whereas now it's just, you create the function, you reference the intent, and that's it. No pointless code. So we're a lot closer to production. Currently, the priorities are things like handling input parameters, properly handling error, failures and stuff when a user doesn't properly put in the user input. And I've been creating, blog posts on Steemit, basically updating my progress. A lot of this is cutting edge stuff. There isn't, documentation out there for the Node.js 2.0 library, nor, like the chat-based analytics, which I integrated. With regards to analytics, it's not like spying on you or anything. Like the only piece of identifying information we use is the anonymous Google ID. So you can't actually link that ID to your real Google account or whatever. So you don't need to worry about that. And it's only really used to figure out the flow of users, like how their dialogue works. So what's often was the case in the past in my previous, Google Assistant projects was that someone would trigger an error, and I would have absolutely no idea how they got there, because you can enter the bot in one of 1,000 different directions, and they could jump from one function to the other in a way you couldn't have predicted. So with this, it will mean that I can like unravel the journey a user took before they got into a weird, unexpected situation, whatever. Yeah, so just some other things I need to do for the Beyond BitShares stuff is like I'm going to make my own local BitShares nodes so I can cut down the latency. That's not a serious concern at the moment, but when it gets into production, that'll be better. You won't have to wait a couple of seconds. It'll be instant. Then it'll be a matter of just sending it to Google. And then further on, it would be like localization for all the languages around the world. And finally, with regards to the Hug REST API, so if you don't know, I created a Hug REST API, which is basically just a public-facing interface for the public BitShares blockchain. So you can just do a GET request and get whatever information you need. When I was working on the Beyond BitShares stuff, specifically like working on the handling of user input, I've spotted a bunch of errors, or more likely, it actually was coming up crashing. I was like, oh, what? So I fixed all that, and it's now in production. I do need to push it to testnet, but that's all good, and this is all open source, available on GitHub. Does anyone have any questions regarding, Hertz, Beyond BitShares, or the Hug REST API?
Me.
Yeah, sure, go for it. What do you want to know?
What happens to Hertz in the Black Swan?
With BSIP 18, we just started back up again. I mean, a Black Swan isn't really that big of a deal anymore.
Okay, and you also talked about you doing coding a bunch. Mm-hmm. What does that have to do with Hertz?
With a Smartcoin, you need price feeds. And in order to come up with that price feed, what's the value of Hertz this time, you need to figure out, okay, what's the current sine wave point, and then what's the current price of BitShares, in USD, and then combine the two and put out what the price should be for Hertz. So there was programming required, for many different witnesses use different price feed scripts. Some rely on Waku's BTS tools, others use Xerox price feed scripts, others use their own homebrew scripts, and some others use the BTS price. So we've now got full price feed coverage for Hertz, and it's coded in a way that you can easily just enter different variables. You don't need to recreate the entire implementation. So subsequent Hertz kind of style smart coins should be more easily launched.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Also, why is Hertz better than BitUSD?
Well, I wouldn't say it was better. I mean, currently BitUSD actually has better liquidity, more holders and more interest, more people know about it. I think Hertz is highly experimental. It's going to be interesting to see how the market behaves. If you read the white paper, there's I kind of lay out what the market behavior may be like, at certain phases throughout the the oscillation. Where that could be at the peak, it could be a shorter sell wall with low buy pressure, and at the same at the trough, it could be a high buy wall with low sell pressure. So that could give you an opportunity to make a large move, in the one go. Whereas in the BitUSD market, say if you wanted to move like several $1 million or whatever, that could crash the price of BitShares itself.
Oh, that's interesting, man. I'll look into it.
Anyone else?
Yeah, the Hug REST API that works with Google Assistant. I kind of want to see, like, how have people been using it up to now? Like, do you have any of that data, or are you kind of just like, I'm at that point where I don't know yet, and give me a couple months?
Yeah, it's very difficult. So if I was to use, I was looking up, okay, how do I integrate, analytics? I've been looking in my the access logs, and there are a lot of bots trying to crawl the entire website, like Yandex, whatever. But I've not got proper analytics integrated yet, so I don't know how it's being used. I can see that over time how much bandwidth the VPS is using, how much CPU time is being used, whatever. But in the future, ideally, within every single function, I would include like a broadcast to Google Analytics that this function was used or whatever. How that would impact performance, I'm not sure yet, but I think probably the best bet for me would be to use the Google Analytics server API or something along those lines. Most of the commercial available, REST API analytics are kind of wanting you to just use their own personal REST API mechanism, which is not what we want. With the Hug REST API, it's extremely efficient. It's highly scalable. It uses Gunicorn and Nginx or Nginx, whatever. I don't want to have to migrate to a new platform just to get this insight, but I do think it's a worthwhile insight to investigate, because it could be highly used, or people might be using it the wrong way. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. Fav asks here, actually, can I use Hug API with my Google Home right now?
Right. So at the moment, the dialog flow, like export, isn't open sourced yet. Once I have been published onto Google, I will make that open source, to which you will be able to take that export, import it into your own personal Dialogflow project, then take the Firebase code, launch it, and you could run your own instance. You can use the Hug REST API, the public version, for whatever you want to do. So if you are interested in coding your own, Google Home thing at the moment, then, go ahead. But if you were to just right now query the BitShares Hug REST API for whatever, then it would. No. In the future, though, it will.
But right now, you're looking at getting the information from the usages is basically your next step, so you can kind of have answers to the questions that I asked earlier regarding that.
Yeah, we'll have the analytics for the Beyond BitShares, both through Dialogflow and through Chatbase. So that will give us an insight into, okay, how are users actually using it? How are users discovering it? Where are people making, dialogue errors? Are people trying to give user input, but we're just not detecting that properly? That's the kind of insights we'll be getting. But yeah, the insights from the Hug REST API analytics could be like, okay, our external websites integrating this and constantly ticking over? That would be worthwhile looking up. Anyone can take the BitShares Hug REST API and run their own private repo, server. All you need to do is change the API key, and it would be private. No one can access it, or well, they wouldn't be able to use the functions, basically.
I'm very interested to see what you find out on this front. I'm not gonna lie, because it's kind of cool to see like where people are going to be using this type of assistant or AI almost technology that really kind of like helps you find information and helps you with various things that you can kind of automate. So it's kind of like one of those things where you have an API like this and it interacts with Google, and it's like some pretty powerful stuff that can be done. Of course, the question is always, what are people using it for? What are they planning on using for? And is it always going to be good? But I guess that's another conversation in and of itself. Does anybody else have any questions or comments that they'd like to bring up on this?
Yeah, I was thinking about actually having such analytics transparent on a blockchain, but I'm not sure about the data, how much, if it wouldn't flood the blockchain and stuff. But I think it's maybe a question of the future. To have like the analytics accessible to everyone, but also be privacy minded, that the data is anonymized and stuff like that. So it was just like, is that an idea which could be implemented, or is it like totally, am I missing something?
Well, I don't think it'd be possible for me to share like the credentials to these services, but I could certainly, every once in a while publish, once, Beyond BitShares is on the public market or whatever, I will be publishing potentially the analytics, just high level overview. It wouldn't be that much of an insight. You just see like how people flow through the bot, if particular markets are being queried the most. That's probably the most critical insight that people maybe be looking for, you know. So look out for Steemit posts potentially in the future for high-level overviews of analytics, you know. And yeah, people are asking about privacy in the chat. Basically, yeah, we won't be like, you know, requesting any personal information. The only identifier that we will be looking at is an anonymous Google ID, right? And if you don't set personalization in your Google Assistant usage, then that just comes out to this default like ID that everyone that doesn't use personalization will get. So we won't know who you are, you know, at all. Maybe we'd know that you have like what your device's capabilities are, like you got a screen or you got a speaker, you know, but we wouldn't have any geographical insight or nothing. Yeah.
Of course, that's, I think the caveat with that is if you don't want to be known, use a VPN, because you still are using Google, and Google's been, you know, they're a big company, and they have reasons to have our data, and they have access to them. Yeah, VPN probably won't help you with Google. You're right, Fav, but god dang it, guys, you got to do something. But these are still powerful tools that we can leverage, and I think that if people are caring about their privacy, there are things that they can do. You do definitely have to be very careful these days using any of this stuff or any services, especially like with the AI that's coming out. And it offers some amazing things, though. You know, so it's like you straddle it because you want to see some of these things. Like, who doesn't want to order groceries and have them delivered to their doorstep, you know, whenever they're out doing something else? Or,
Totally.
you know, any of the other things that can potentially happen. You know, Johnny comes in at night and he gets 10 BTS because he came home on time. You know, things like this are potentially possible with these types of automation and assistance, and there's a lot of things that are possible. So I look forward to seeing kind of where that goes and how it works with BitShares in general.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, if you're really concerned, you can check the code yourself, then run it all in your own private, you know, instance and have no one else touching it, you know. And if you're really concerned about Google, just don't use it, you know. Maybe you could take the code and run it on a more FOSS, you know, bot platform, whatever.
Or have your own AI that you connect it up with, that you rule over. Okay, anyway. Does anybody else have any questions or comments for CM?
Yes, CM, I have one.
Oh, we heard somebody, but not very loudly.
Yeah, CM, I have a question for CM.
Go ahead, dude.
Yeah, hey Harrison, is there any way of turning up your mic by chance?
Yeah, I'll just turn it up.
Here, I turned up your volume to 200% on my side, but I don't know if it does anything.
Yeah, can you still hear me?
Yeah, go for it, man.
Perfect.
Okay,
Thank you.
So, yeah, question for CM. So now that you've made a Hug REST API for the BitShares blockchain, what would be one application that you think would be really well suited to utilize your API to improve the user experience of BitShares? So, like, what are you aiming to enable people to build?
Well, it's not so much for something inside the BitShares client, you know, that would use the internal APIs, whatever, but just your own scripts, any websites that needs to have a little bit of information, like what's the latest block number or what's the current ticker information for, you know, BitShares, you know, that could be just a jQuery, you know, GET request, whatever from a website, you know, so it's just easier access to BitShares blockchain information effectively. You could just do like a curl or a GET request from your terminal, you know, without having to directly talk to a BitShares full API node, whatever.
Okay, so yeah, essentially to enable people to use it in sort of like a light client sense without having to go the whole way of running their own full BitShares node.
Yeah, it's just for really querying information in a read-only fashion. So you can't really, you know, do any writes to the, you know, the network or whatever. It's only read-only, like a blockchain explorer, effectively, just in a different.
Okay, so it could enable voice-based blockchain explorer type services and things like that.
Well, that's what the Beyond BitShares Google Assistant is. You'll be able to like just talk. Everyone here, once it's launched, will be able to talk through their phone and go, "Okay, Google, what is the, you know, current price of BitShares on the BitShares network?" And it would just immediately talk to you. Like imagine you did a Google search and the only result was us talking directly to you about BitShares. You know, it's
Hey Google, what has Harrison been doing on BitShares lately?
That is functionality, you know.
You could do like show the last 30 transactions for such and such a BitShares account. What is the last 30 transactions on a zero bid? Things like that.
It's kind of crazy.
That is functionality we got, but not as specific as that. But like, what is, you know, custom miners trade history in the BitShares DEX is a valid, you know, function on the Beyond Bit.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, sorry, Iron Monkey.
Well, you know, it's a good topic to bring up, and it's a good question, and it even brings up the fact that now with something like that, you could even have it where it's almost like now we can do even further blockchain analytics. We can drill down and see what's going on a lot better, you know, and see some certain patterns and things. And heck, there's the potential to even put layers on top of this where it's like there's certain behaviors that put up flags and we get to go look at the flag. You know, like there's so much. Yeah,
perhaps if someone's leeching heavily, you could reach out to them and be like, okay man, run your own server. Yeah,
good point. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
What do you mean by leeching? Are you talking about like people who query the API nodes too much?
I'm talking about, well, the Hug REST API runs in a single core of like 1 gig of RAM, right? So it's limited resources. So if suddenly like, you know, Amazon.com or something was just querying us solely, it'd be like, okay, you know, my Hug REST API would be like, run your own, man. You know, I've not got resources for that. So it's fully open source. Anyone can replicate it and make it private, do what they want, you know?
Oh, okay, I got it.
Okay, well, I'd like to cover before we move on, or are you pretty much good for the day and you've covered what you wanted?
That's me, man. Thanks for letting me talk again.
Well, thank you for joining up, and I want to thank everybody who joins up to these Hangouts and everybody who tells people about these Hangouts. It tends to be hard to get coverage in cryptocurrency, and a lot of these places out there, as you guys can see, are making a lot of money and getting a lot of views by talking about this is going to be the next pump and it's going to be worth, you know, the next Bitcoin. And these are like generally people talking about coins that will really never have any value because they don't have any services that they offer. And we kind of have tried to take a secondary approach, a different approach, kind of turn that on its head and make it so we're talking about what you guys want to talk about, what you guys think is important on the blockchain that is presently the longest blockchain in the world and among the oldest, and also a decentralized exchange that somehow all the other cryptocurrencies didn't realize they could easily trade on, apparently. This is something that's world renowned or world class and should be world renowned. And our voices and our persistence is what is going to get it to that point where people have to notice it and have to recognize it. And you'll be here as one of the people, you'll be able to say that you were here during the hardest times when people didn't understand just what BitShares was or how powerful it was. And you guys are the ones who are helping those people have an archives where they can actually listen to the updates and see how transparent our community is, what it offers, and how these powerful tools enable us to do some really amazing things that literally are not found anywhere else in cryptocurrency. So I just want to make it clear to everybody, like this is big stuff and you guys are part of it. And just because most of cryptocurrency doesn't see it, this is a gem, what you guys provide. So please make sure that the people who are doing things of value, that you let people know about them. And let people know to join these Hangouts or share them. You don't have to upvote them all the time or reward them in any way, shape, or form, but sharing them in general is one of the best ways of getting this content out there and to show people that BitShares actually has governance. It has people who are sitting there building things like APIs that will work with, you know, different kinds of AI programs, and people who are building, and fixing the core engine of BitShares and doing things like this every day. And that there's also the tools for them to govern themselves. So with that said, I'd like to go ahead and call on vICOFund, which is another Joe. Are you able to talk a little bit about vICOFund?
Yes, I am. How's it going, Fuzzy?
Pretty good. You're a little bit low. Let me see if I can turn you up.
Yes,
I mean, you sound really clear.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'll try to speak up a little. I got the mic right in front of my mouth, so.
Okay, try now.
Okay, how's this?
Yeah, it's a little bit better.
Okay, I'll try to speak up a bit too.
Thank you.
Okay, vICOFund is a fund that it's pretty much just what it says right there, an ICO fund. Started working with these guys a couple of years ago, and we were looking for ICOs as you do the legwork and stuff to try to find out which ones are working, which ones are not. We started getting a pretty good track record. Out of probably close to 20, we don't have a single loser in US dollars. Of course, Ether outran a couple of them, but as far as the fiat investment goes, none of them have been losers. So we thought we had something we could help other people to invest in, to get in on ICOs by providing the research and doing the investment for them. So this fund has been set up. It's been set up in South America in a company in Chile in order to avoid the SEC regulations and all that stuff. So the way it's set up right now is we're going to have a BitShares token, the vICO, which, yes, minimum deposit. And what will happen is people can send in their Ether. We'll give them a BitShares token on Open Ledger, and that will represent their ownership. It's not going to be a traded token because that would defeat the KYC AML efforts that are being put behind this. How scam is this, huh? I mean, it's a legitimate question. This is, some of you guys know me. I'm another Joe. You can see me on the different places. And Jay, the guy that is running, he's a retired guy. He's been around for a long time in the investment sector, and same with Mita. And I know Jay really well. I've known him for a few years, and I've entrusted him with a lot of information about myself, my accounts, and what I'm doing. So I hope that answers your question, Vav.
I think one of the things that a lot of people get kind of concerned with is whenever you have to have a trusted party in general, that person needs to have been around those people for a while, or needs a very strong marketing campaign, because it seems for some odd reason a very strong marketing campaign creates so much FOMO that people stop caring about those risks. But I think that might be why Fav was bringing that up.
Oh, yeah, it's a totally legitimate question. And this isn't, they're not going for a big home run. They're not trying to do a $200 million project. They're trying to keep it a lower scale, get a few investors on board with a decent amount of funds to try to hit a home run for a few people. If you get too big, it gets too hard to manage. And honestly, Jay said, I don't want to be managing that much money. I would rather have about $20 million that I can invest. And his perspective is that what we're seeing in ICOs right now only has a couple of years to run. So he wants to try to jump on that and to leverage a decent amount of money so that he can try to get in on some of these at a pretty high level and then get out and make the money for people and then be done with it. He doesn't plan on this lasting any more than about 3 years.
and this will be a token on the BitShares exchange. It'll be a user issued asset. I guess one question would be, can he pull them back? As in, when you create a user issued asset, some of them, you know, there's the option to be able to pull them back from holders, right? And put them back in your wallet. Sometimes this actually makes sense for those who might be going, oh, this is horrible. So it's nice to have the option, and I won't give specific examples, though I do have them, coupons. But things like this. But in this case, you would probably want it where that permission is not even possible with the coin itself, right? So nobody can pull those back. Can you give us any information on that? Whether people can pull it back, or whether the creator can pull it back from people who've already purchased it?
No, there would be no reason to do that. People purchase it. It's just going to be non-tradable is all. So it's just for the KYC purposes. But other than that, it'll go into their account, and it represents their share of the total. And then when distributions are made, they'll be made according, you know, to however many tokens are out there. Did that answer your question?
Yep, it sure did. I would always urge people who are new to the scene, and this is something just to keep in mind whenever any token comes online, is to make sure that those things, because we've been recently, I'm bringing it up not so much because of this project in general, but because that's seems to be a tendency to be a pretty important thing that people don't really even realize, that somebody can do that stuff. It's been kind of a community discussion. So this is another good time to go, do your research and inspect token permissions. Thank you, CM.
Yeah, and Fav also brought up the Ripple thing. I'll just comment on that real quick. That was an investment. It's gone. It was bought. It went up a lot, and it was sold. It wasn't actually part of the fund because the fund doesn't exist yet. It's being implemented right now. This is crowdfunding for it. So there is nothing in it at the moment except a few Ether that some people have already invested. It doesn't officially open for investment until the 18th, but if you register and you send your Ether in now, then you're already in. It's already going to be logged. It just might not show up on the website for a few days because the script's not being run regularly right now, not until the 18th.
Have you guys considered doing something instead, like a market pegged asset like Bit20 does? Only you create the fund yourselves?
I guess I'm not familiar with.
Oh, let me go ahead and
I'm not running this fund. I'm just helping these guys out. We were doing this stuff together, and
sure. The only reason I'm coming up with this idea is because I'm thinking, how could we potentially help you and make it so it's actually like, so it doesn't necessarily put any red flags up for people. And one of the best ways I can think of is a smart coin that pegs to a portfolio that you guys decide on. Then you really wouldn't even need to take in a bunch of funding. You could just hold the tokens and distribute, you know, that you guys short into existence in the very beginning, and other people would match it on the other side, and then you can kind of ride the portfolios and maybe even start making multiple different funds like that.
Would that still provide the ability to have the leverage? You know, if you have $500,000, let's say, in Ether, and you go to an ICO and say, hey, we represent a group of investors, we have this Ether, give us a deal on your ICO.
Well, I don't know that it would work that way. It would actually be more, you wouldn't need that. Like, you could literally have it where this index fund essentially carries, it's like a basket of chosen cryptos that you choose, and they're ICOs. And you let people start essentially betting on the market that you run. And people would trade it in a decentralized manner and as long as I don't know exactly how you'd have to do it on the legal end for this stuff, because I don't deal with market pegged assets too much as far as that goes. But what I do know is that if you had a market pegged asset that actually tracked the value of those tokens, you wouldn't need to buy into them. You could literally short into them to buy into them, you know, and hold both ends. And then you could sell them if you wanted to at a higher price. You could basically keep your own market. And then when people join into the market, you could even have a slight market fee. So when people are trading that, you actually gain value from that, because they actually give you a little portion of the market fee.
Right. Yeah, that might be something they'd want to explore. I'll have to talk to them about it. I think part of the challenge is, you know, they're trying to get in on, investigate the ICO before it's launched.
Yeah.
You know, they have their launch day and everybody makes their scramble. They try to make their decision before. Do you want to get in beforehand and try to get leverage that way, or does it look like something that might hit the market and then go down? You know, try to weigh all those things. But I don't know if managing it that way would be conducive to having those options.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's always something that would be up to you guys. But I will say that the Bit20 asset, and what they did was they did something slightly different, where they did the top 20, right, at any given time, and they would occasionally take a snapshot of the top 20 and switch, you know, those top 20. But it's gone up
That's
like
just a
ridiculous amount.
Fund.
Yeah. And basically what it did, though, was it would keep in the top 20 at all times, you know. So basically it's always going to be, if those top 20, it diversifies your portfolio by holding one thing. And it's to the point now where they actually had to create, what do they call them? I want to say Bit20s, but it's not Bit20s, but something like that, where they actually have to like divide the Bit20 into smaller denominations now, to get people who are not big guys to be able to buy into it, because it's becoming kind of like a premium on it. So it's kind of cool to see that that's how Twentix. Thank you, Twentix. Thank you, Steam Power Picks. My savior. Okay, so anyway, is there anything that anybody else would like to say before we move on? And thank you, Fab, for your input. Thank you, everybody else, for their input too. Okay, well, another Joe, I thank you for joining up and telling everybody about this. It's cool to see that you guys are going to be trying to do this on the exchange. I'm always interested to see where people are going with it, but I also obviously understand that, and it seems like obviously you do too, that people need to definitely do their own research on these things and ask themselves, you know, if they trust something, or if they think that they don't trust something. And generally they can, you know, on the BitShares exchange, when you look at a token, there are things that you can see on there as far as the settings for tokens that can help with trust. Obviously continuing to be out in the open and working on the project continually over time also continues to add to the trust. So thank you for being here and being transparent about it and bringing the opportunity to people.
Thank you, Fuzzy. Appreciate all you do, man.
Oh, we appreciate you guys. And for that, I'm going to sick Taco on us for the final portion. Actually, I think Taco's mic is not working. Is that correct, Taco? He can... Okay, so we are going to really quickly, I think we got about 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If you guys are okay with that, we'll run 10 minutes over. The first thing that we're going to talk about that Taco wanted to bring up was going to be the decentralized effort to provide 25 additional API nodes for BitShares. I think it's absolutely important that we consider doing that. I also think that we should find a way of rewarding them, just because, let's face it, it costs money to run a server and to run these services. And these services are what keep the DEX being able to be interfaced with. Obviously, services that create their own, they create their own APIs generally, and they run their own nodes if they're a big service. But a lot of people who are just testing out things and playing around, it's something important for us to have available, because it actually makes that possible. It makes it more scalable in terms of being able to use it quickly, because that is one of the things, obviously, that makes it harder, right? There is the speed of light issue in information. So with that said, does anybody have anything that they'd like to bring up about this?
Yes.
Or participating?
Yes. So I did some research with light presence yesterday. Because we had this hypothesis that like the nodes were really slow. Well, yeah. the latency was slow. I think I mentioned this to you as well. So when you use the wallet, it's like really laggy, right?
Sometimes it does lag. I experience it myself.
Yeah, so it's actually not a problem in the nodes. It's a problem in the user interface code.
Really?
I think that, yeah, it is, because I use I tested a lot of nodes. Like I would connect to the nodes, they are not laggy, okay? It's a problem in the user interface code where it's like the node sends you the time it takes to connect to a node, not the time the node takes to respond to your messages. So like, let's say, for example, the time to connect to a node would have been 3 seconds, but for it to send you a message would have been like 1/10 of a second. So it's, the more nodes isn't really, well, at least for the user experience side, it doesn't seem like a problem.
So does anybody know if that's the reason why they're changing or why they're adding them?
One question I have about this adding, it sounds a lot like what they're doing is kind of a witness role, in terms of putting out all these nodes. How are they going to be managed and measuring their performance, et cetera? That's accountability. I mean, normally a witness has accountability, but a worker proposal, of course, I think funding this via a worker proposal is a great idea. I don't see any problem with that. But my concern is, my interest in this is what is the ongoing maintenance and accountability beyond this? I mean, if they're all set up and their cost of them is subsidized by the worker proposal, then there's an ongoing concern, and we can have accountability through the worker proposal to cut the funding. But that's not necessarily cutting the funding for just one; it would be cutting the funding for all of them. So I don't understand quite how the how this is going to be working going forward. But I don't have a problem with worker proposals funding such things. I just want to find out. Like I'm appreciating. On the testing that you're doing to gauge the performance of these things, and that's valuable information to the UI team if they've got a bug or an overhead there that's really contributing to a poor UI experience, and that's something that the UI team certainly needs to know about for sure.
Yeah, I notified, well, I'm not sure if the UI team knows about it, but like the core devs know about it. But like the more important question is, why are these 25 more nodes required?
Exactly. Well, I mean, that's a very good question in and of itself.
Right? Because they're only required if we have performance problems with the nodes. But last I checked, there's around 50 nodes around the world. That's a lot. That's like a data center, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if you compare that number with the number of other projects, which they're not necessarily graphene projects, but they're talking about thousands of nodes in their networks. Now, that's full nodes. Those are not miners per se. Those are people that just operate full nodes on their networks, and there's in the thousands. So 50 is nothing in comparison to that. So if you want to decentralize, the more the better in that regard.
I thought BitShares Wallet users themselves acted kind of like a node themselves.
No, they don't, because the wallets are simply light wallets that connect to a full node. So there's no data in the wallets themselves. They're kind of centralized through the servers, but we've got quite a few servers. But what I'm contending here is that more servers are always better if they're reasonably maintained and they have a reasonable performance.
Wait, actually, Tom, that's a really good point. Like, that's an even bigger problem, by the way. That's like one of the biggest problems, is that the light wallets are not actually light wallets. You should just call them clients. So what I'm trying to say is, the light wallets, they just take data from the witnesses or the API nodes they're connected to. So it's kind of like a very trusted system. So, like, I'm not sure if the light wallets do some verification, but verification on the data they received. But the way I've used them for a long time, there's no verification there.
What do you mean? You mean verifying the data? Yeah, that's the job of the blockchain, not the wallets to do. That's the verification. Now they need to verify that it's a legitimate node, but that's built into the protocol. So I'm not sure what you mean exactly when you say validation.
So okay, I'm just trying to say there. So in like non-graphene systems, light clients, they actually do validation on the data received. Whereas here it doesn't. So it's kind of misleading to call it a light client. But that's like a terminology thing, but I just got confused on that. There's also, actually, we also did some other research. Well, I forgot what I was going to say, so you can go on.
Oh, it's okay. I just want to make sure that we kind of keep on topic. And of course, we are on topic, but this topic can go deep. So rather than do that, we can keep the majority of it for the after party. Okay, so with that said, the next topic is defending the blockchain. Stan is heading an initiative where he's going to be essentially the trustee of a legal defense fund, and he's going to be helping to defend the blockchain community and represent the blockchain community as they have to encounter the difficulties of regulation, and helping to explain to regulators why certain things should not be regulated, and the differences between the blockchain technology that we use and what sometimes it is seen as. So generally, this is a pretty big task that Stan is taking on, and it's pretty. Did I hear Stan speak up? Actually,
I'm here.
Well, Stan, why don't I go ahead and let you say something real quick about it?
Well, yeah, there's a number of things that the industry needs. Every one of us is really a little guy out there, and a lot of time the wolves can cut somebody out of the pack and be tearing them to shreds, and they can't defend themselves, especially with the government policy of the first thing they do is come in, take everything you own from you, freeze your assets, and then say defend yourself. So having the ability to help people who have been picked on in that way, I think is good for all of us. And so we have several examples up on the website that talk about cases where it would be nice if we had some funds to pursue. And those three have to do with the Jared Rice issue, the Bitcoin Latina issue, and a third guy who got taken down for simply selling Bitcoins to an undercover agent. It's perfectly fine to sell Bitcoins out there anonymously 1,000 different ways, but doing it to somebody face to face is somehow worthy of a crime. So, these are the kind of things that we want to be able to provide a little bit of protection or assistance for their legal battles. Of course, how much of that we can do depends on the community and whether they want this service or not. But I think it would be good if we all knew there was a fund. And in fact, we're putting this fund into the Billion Hero campaign so that a couple years from now, when BitShares finally hits its true stride, then we'll have literally billions of funding to defend the community. But between now and then, it's up to who contributes. And so that's what we're trying to do right now.
How's the growth of it going right now, Stan?
It's a steady trickle, but it's nothing overwhelming. We haven't got really the stride on our PR campaign, which would be putting the information out there about it for a lot of people to hear about it in their own forums and way of understanding. We did have an incident where apparently somebody in this community contacted DigitalOcean and filed some kind of complaint that made the DigitalOcean shut down the server and not even give us our code back. It was a facetious account with a nasty name, so it's hard for me to understand how DigitalOcean would do that unless there was some type of a government, somebody in the government calling them up and asking them to do that. I just don't understand how DigitalOcean would summarily pull the plug and refuse to give the files back. But we're working around that.
I think, the more that I've been thinking about this, I like the idea of a DAC for this. Why not? Why not bring a bunch of friggin' common law lawyers to a DAC and lawyers who are able to, to offer services and answer questions?
I know Ernie Hancock, Freedom's Phoenix radio program in the mornings, and he mentioned on one of his programs that they were putting together a similar fund. Have you discussed this with the broader community in general, Stan?
The problem with the similar funds, though, these funds are generally that you have to have somebody who's trusted. And even if that person's trustworthy themselves, they can have people barge into their house with guns and take all their stuff. So it's like, why not have a DAC? I say it again.
That's a possibility. I'd like to comment on something before it scrolls by. There's a post up there by Harrison. Is it a good idea to be using large-scale funds to defend Rice, who directly lied about owning an FDIC-insured bank? Surely there are more deserving individuals to defend from litigation. Well, if you have been following that, you'll find out that no, Jared didn't lie about it. He was defrauded by the guy who was selling the bank, who they have tried to arrest. They have deposed him. He admitted that he fraudulently sold a bank to Jared, and now they've got an arrest warrant out for him, but he was missing in action, and so they're trying to track him down. So there's an example where this community thought that they were doing some really good detective work, and they didn't know what they were talking about. And poor Jared is out there, swinging in the wind. I think all of the major fraudulent charges against him will eventually be dropped or thrown out, and there is exactly why we want to have not a lynching by a mob, but if there is a problem, get them a good defense and look into it. I think Jared's coming out of this as a hero, and those who tried to lynch him are going to have egg on their face when they're done.
I think it's definitely something where we should bring this stuff up and we should keep an open mind about it. I personally don't know enough of the details all the time, and there's generally details that you never know. But what I would say is I think that something like this, regardless of Jared, is a great thing that we should definitely be considering. And
another interesting thing about it, I just saw the SEC chairman has admitted that there are all kinds of possible different tokens. They're not all securities, contrary to what he had said before, and that something can change. A token can change from being a security to not a security over time. Now, with that new insight from the SEC chairman, we can assume that every token deserves a fair shot to determine whether it's a security or not, and that we shouldn't be doing SWAT team raids on somebody's farmhouse when the total amount of the case turns down to, we disagree with you about what your lawyers told you was or was not a security. I mean, those kind of things should be handled nice and peacefully, and not brought out, not using the full sledgehammer of the government. And that's what we want to do, is go out there and make sure that people are not cut out of the pack, isolated, have all their funds seized, and then forced to try to defend themselves with nobody's help.
Well, what we're doing is we're in these very early stages, and whenever experts in cryptocurrency are brought in front of congressional panels and things like that, the reason they're bringing them in front of them is to see and learn more about it, to ask the questions of these experts of how they're going to govern it. And one of the things that I think that we always have to be like recognizing is that right now is when precedents with this technology are going to be set. I mean, look at the DAO. The DAO is a great example of setting that precedent in the law and making it so people have to move forward. And if we can have our own representation, I think that that's something that we really, really need. And we also need a group of lawyers who are also crypto lovers, who are willing to accept crypto for that. So I think that, helping that is something I'm definitely on board for, regardless of anything else.
Yeah, the existence of such a fund could be a bit of a deterrent, and then also a reason to get invited to testify. Right now, the people who were asked to testify at those things, I'm not sure how they get that gig, but I'm sitting there saying, I'd sure like to be sitting there saying a few things. So maybe this will provide that opportunity if it gets big enough to be taken seriously.
Well, MSK Cavs fan said share drop on some judges as well. Isn't that how things are done? Thank you very much for answering the question, Stan, and thank you everybody for asking them. And I think that we can be adults and all say that, the most important message here is the fact that we need to consider things like this as far as legal representation for everybody, because setting those precedents really gives us a foundation from which all other legal battles will be fought. So I can't think of a better investment. Now, regardless of whether, it might be a debated topic who it gets used on, and I don't know enough about it to step in either way, but as an effort in general, I'm definitely on board for this, and I'm very interested in it. Well, now, with that said, thank you everybody for joining up today. Thank you for joining every week, and thank you for sharing our content. This is how we get the message out. And I wanted to let you guys all know, I'm going to give you a guest book to sign today at the end of this Hangout. No, we're a little bit over Steam Power Picks. Sorry, man. This topic was pretty big, so I don't want to cut into it. But I do try to keep it an hour and 15 too. So just 2 minutes real quick. Yeah, of course. I just really quickly going to let everybody know that we are starting the Whale Shares beta. And there are some changes that I'm talking about having made to the experience for the Mutual Aid Society chain that we launched. It's a test chain at present. Nobody's earning anything on it. But we do have closed beta access, and we want to offer everybody who's joining these Hangouts the ability to join up and participate in the closed beta as we start changing things around and fixing things up the way that we want a Mutual Aid Society DAC to work. This is not, I will not be running a witness or block producer on this chain. However, there are going to be initial witnesses that are from the community that I trust, simply because of the nature of what we're doing. And this is going to be the test net. And once it is launched, everybody can vote as they wish on it. But I want most of you guys to just realize that the people who are doing that, they are here to help during the early stages. So maybe consider keeping them in if they're continuing to bring value to the chain. But with that said, there is going to be a share drop that is going to be 70% on BitShares. It's going to be 10% on whale share tokens, the vote tokens. There will be another share drop on brownie.pts on the BitShares DEX. And then we are going to have the people who are launching it. They are all going to take a portion for helping to launch for out of the 10. We call it the Satoshi 10. So there's going to be 10% that's share dropped on those people who helped fix up and launch it. Obviously, I will continue passing out whale share vote tokens. They are primarily still that utility token. However, if you are interested in having a share drop, I'm just giving everybody the announcement for the community that's dropping it. And I wanted to let everybody know that that's how we're going. There's going to be 21 million supply at start. I won't go too deep into everything today, but I wanted to let everybody know that I'm going to offer you all the ability to sign the guest book and give me your email just so we can verify that your account is what, and we don't store the record or anything. So once you get verified and you get on the chain, then you'll be able to even access the BitsharesTalk.io forums, like Fab just actually must have read my mind about and posted. And the BitsharesTalk forums will use the whale shares chain credentials. We have plans to make it so you can just log into your account on the whale share chain offline using your credentials. Still need to be done on that front, but let's just say that we are moving forward with it. We're going to create a network where essentially you can reward one another. So every time I hear in here, man, that person needs rewarded, you'll be able to follow them, get updates from all their content because you follow them, and because that's what following people is supposed to be about. And you'll be able to reward them. And that's what this chain is going to be about. It's going to be for the BitShares exchange and the people who are launching it. We're going to be able to offer the potential for BitShares DEX to be directly in there in the forums. So we're also going to add this very Discord is going to be there along with the price of BitShares directly on the site, and it's on our own technology. So I want to just let everybody know that this is a pretty big deal to us. We're actually not pumping and dumping coins. We're not doing an ICO. We're share dropping on a bunch of people who've earned these tokens for attending these hangouts and doing community activities, or buying them off of somebody who did do those things and already earned them. They are utility cross-chain utility tokens that will create value between the whale shares chain and BitShares. And we're kind of leveraging this so people in the BitShares community and the people who are holding these tokens can build their own whale token. And we're going to even have something called the whale tank, where if you want, it's going to be like a Shark Tank, where the whales can join with their tokens and can give them to people who are going to potentially share drop on whale stake. And whale stake are the tokens that you're holding and locking away. So we're going to create a dynamic on the whale shares chain where in the whales give tokens from BitShares that are worth their own upvotes to upvote content and pay it based on whether somebody is coming up with a cool idea that they're also willing to share drop on us. And that'll all be connecting up synergistically with the BitShares DEX. and I thought that you guys would all like to hear about that, hear about it here first. And I want to offer all of you guys access to it today. So let me go ahead and get that link. And feel free to shut down the Hangout for this week. Thank you, everybody, for joining up. And I will get you guys all this during the after party. See you next Saturday. And see you for the EOS talk tonight.